Please do me a favor and watch this whole thing. There's a payoff at the end, especially during the last 2 minutes relative to what I'm going to say at the beginning. I'm going to talk about Utah Senator Mike Lee. It has always been perplexing to me how he went from, in 2016, doing absolutely every single thing he possibly could in his power to derail Donald Trump being named as the Republican nominee for president in that year, including trying to disenfranchise at the convention. He tried to disenfranchise every single Republican primary voter who had voted for Donald Trump. He detested that person that much. And he saw him as that much of a threat to American democracy that he did that at the convention. Following the convention, on October 7th of 2016, with the release of the Access Hollywood tape, Mike Lee was one of the first and most prominent Republicans, elected Republicans, a United States Senator, to speak out forcefully against Donald Trump, saying that if anyone had spoken to my wife or my daughters or my mother or my sisters or any of my female friends the way that Donald Trump spoke on that Access Hollywood tape, I would not hire that person, and I certainly would not hire that person to be the leader of the free world. And then Donald Trump was hired by the electorate to be the leader of the free world. And then we see this transformation of Utah Senator Mike Lee from that to beginning on November 7th, 2020, doing absolutely every single thing that he could to help Donald Trump overturn the results of the 2020 election. And I'm going to talk for a couple of seconds here. I'm going to read 3 paragraphs about Mike Lee's father, who was an absolute paragon of conservative attorneys. Rex Edwin Lee was a giant of the conservative legal movement. Raised in a small town in Arizona, he graduated as valedictorian from Brigham Young University and finished first in his class at the University of Chicago Law School. At 36, he was recruited to become the founding dean of Brigham Young University's law school, a position he held until a newly elected president, Ronald Reagan, came calling. Serving as Solicitor General to the United States during Reagan's first term, Rex Lee argued before the Supreme Court with, quote, an astonishing rate of success. According to former Supreme Court Justice David Souter, Rex Lee was the best Solicitor General this nation had ever had. But Rex Lee's legacy is independence as much as intellect. White House political aides soon discovered that he was not automatically their man. Rex Lee was reliably conservative on a host of matters, busing, abortion, prayer in schools, yet sometimes set aside his own views and those of the administration that he represented for what he described as the broad interests of the nation. The resulting conflicts with Reagan's Republican Party and criticism from far-right conservatives wore Rex Lee down. He resigned his post in June of 1985, and he remarked of the political pressure he faced, "I'm the Solicitor General, not the pamphleteer general." He had principles, and he stood on those principles, and he put his money where his mouth was on those principles. In 1996, during Mike Lee's second year of law school, also the first year that Fox News started broadcasting, Rex Lee died of cancer. He was just 61 years old. Rex was eulogized by his eldest son, Mike Lee's older brother. Mike Lee never lived up to the things that his father and his older brother accomplished. He was eulogized by his eldest son as well as by two Supreme Court justices, Sandra Day O'Connor and Byron White. Byron White said that Rex Lee was the epitome of integrity. That's from an article by Tim Alberta, a 30-page long profile on Mike Lee that came out last week. What would Mike Lee's dad, Rex Lee, think of his son going from where he was in 2016 to Donald Trump could never, ever, ever be permitted to take power, to just 4 years later, using the power of his office and all of his best efforts to try to help Donald Trump overturn the results of a free and fair election in 2020 and disenfranchise 81 million voters. That was the subject of what I discussed in my podcast episode that I recorded last night, Full Potato Friday. There's only one potato this week, and that potato is Mike Lee. Please watch the following clip and especially focus on the last couple of minutes where I come back around to Mike Lee's dad, Rex. There are links in my link tree. If you want to learn more about our podcast page, please go check it out. And I'm going to tag my brother below in this. Please go follow him. He's this close to 100,000 followers. Let's get him there before tomorrow, please. I would consider that a personal favor. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right, kids. It's time for another episode of Full Potato Friday with your host, Hawk. That's me. Going to do something a little bit different in this episode. There is only going to be one potato as opposed to a cast of potatoes. One guy that has always confused me, if that's the right word, throughout this whole Trump presidency and January 6th and all of the efforts to overturn the 2020 election between Election Day 2020, January 6, 2021, Inauguration Day 2021, has been Utah Senator Mike Lee. During Obama's presidency, he always presented himself. He's an attorney. He has a law degree. He went to law school. He worked as an attorney. Mike Lee grew up Mormon. He always presented himself as a principled conservative. I don't even know what the fuck that means anymore. Who cared deeply about the Constitution, the institution of Congress, the institution of the United States Supreme Court, the legal system, the judiciary branch, that history, precedent, however you want to paint that stuff. He presented himself as someone who cared deeply about the legal history, the judiciary branch of the United States for the last 250 years. And then Donald Trump got elected, and all of that went away. To the point where he, beginning on that Saturday, November 7th, I remember where I was. I was at my ex-girlfriend's sister's house in Westlake Village. We were dog sitting. And that Saturday was the day that Rudy Giuliani held his press conference at Four Seasons Landscaping. And CNN interrupted that press conference to announce that Joe Biden was going to be the next president of the United States. It had taken 4 days to count enough votes to make it a mathematical certainty that Joe Biden would be the president. From that moment forward, through at least January 6th, Mike Lee immediately began trying to help Donald Trump and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, overturn the election results. He had gone from being this respected conservative constitutionalist in the historical sense in American history to trying to help Donald Trump overturn the results of a free and fair election and maintain power that he did not earn. As Kamala Harris stated in the presidential debate earlier this week, in 2020, you were fired by 81 million people, which, it's a nice little reference to The Apprentice. But Mike Lee had gotten to a point where he was willing to ignore or throw out or reject or disenfranchise the votes of 81 million Americans for Donald Trump, of all fucking people. I hope Jack Smith comes for every one of these motherfuckers, man. But that's just me. I'm using quite a bit of profanity in this episode. It's dramatically much more profanity than I normally use in my podcast episodes. And it's because I'm activated, I'm agitated, and I'm going to read this last paragraph, and then I need to go for a walk and have a cigarette before I start punching strangers. The first time I visited Lee's office in Washington, I kept staring beyond him at a bronze statue in the corner of the room. It depicted a man, elegantly dressed and evidently deep in thought, his right hand hovering just below his chin as he looked off in search of answers. It was Mike Lee's father, Rex Lee. I asked the senator whether he ever wonders what his father would have made of all of this. All the time, Lee answered, looking wistful. He closed his eyes. All the time. He didn't elaborate, and I found myself wondering too. Thank you for subscribing to our podcasts. I'll see you soon.